This engine came out of an '89 Ford Ranger, and the engine experienced an oil pressure loss while driving one day, and I noticed the change in oil pressure by looking at the gauge. The gauge um, was flickering, full scale deflection from no pressure to normal pressure, and it did that for some time and then went completely to indicate no pressure. And I made the mistake of thinking that needle indicated was an analog indication of oil pressure. It is not. It's just receiving a signal from an on-off switch. The oil pressure sensor is just an on-off switch. When there's pressure, it sends signal to the needle, and the needle switches on and off. It doesn't indicate amount of pressure at all. And so I thought it might be an electrical connection. As it turns out, it is an electrical connection in the sensor switch. So I made a mistake of continuing the drive. And after about 200 miles, the camshaft seized up. I found that out later when looking at the timing belt. All the teeth were chewed off of the crankshaft gear that turns the timing belt. So this is the engine, and it's apart now, and I found out the cause of the oil pressure loss. When I pulled the pan, this is the seal, and as you can see, this seal is highly degraded and squished and just coming apart. The rest of the seal through the channel on the oil pan was in good shape, but just the front and back, where it goes around the crankshaft, was squished and deteriorating terribly, being squished out both sides of the oil pan, inside and out. And that material must have been floating around in the oil. I had just changed the oil a week before this happened, and when I pulled the pan, I immediately saw what happened. Here's the oil pickup tube. It's bolted right here to the oil pump, and they're here like this. And here's the opening where the oil goes into the pickup, and there's a screen right there, and it's totally clogged with gasket material. So that's what caused the drop in oil pressure. The engine was probably getting enough oil to lubricate the crankshaft and cylinders, hopefully. I'll find that out because I'm going to completely rebuild the engine now at this point, since it's out of the truck and apart. But I guess the only way to prevent this would be, obviously, to believe your gauge. If the oil pressure gauge indicates 0, shut the engine off, have it towed immediately. Or keep an eye on the oil pan gasket. If I'd look closely, you could see this from the outside of the vehicle underneath the car. You could see part of this gasket coming apart, and if you see that, it's probably happening on the inside of the oil pan too. And well, to fix that, you got to pull the engine out and change the oil pan gasket. Pretty big job. The rest of the engine looks in pretty good shape, and I'm going to see how much can be salvaged. The camshaft is what's seized. The crank turns, the camshaft does not. And I have no idea how much of this can be salvaged or not. But hopefully a lot of it can, and I'll reuse the crank, the short block, and hopefully the head as well. We'll see what kind of damage occurred. So I hope this helps you in your experience with Ford Rangers.